Hello everyone. Today we will continue plant adaptations and our main focus is on xerophytic adaptations. What are xerophytes? So these are the plants which grow in extremely xeric habitat. ऐसे plants जो extremely dry conditions में grow करते हैं उन plants को xerophytes बोलते हैं. And when we talk about xerophyte तो हमारे जो brain में ऐसे कुछ एक photographs images आती हैं. So these are some examples of xerophyte that we will discuss in detail. So xerophytes are the plant which grows in dry or xeric conditions. जो habitat है जहाँ पे ये grow करते हैं that may be physically dry. Physically dry means if the water retaining capacity of that soil is very poor, so that type of habitat is physically dry. जो वाटर रिटेंशन की कैपेसिटी है सॉइल की दैट इज़ वेरी पुअर, जो पानी है वो परकुलेट कर जाता है उस सॉइल से, सो दैट टाइप ऑफ सॉइल इज डेफिशिएंट ऑफ वाटर एंड दैट इज नॉन एज फिजिकली ड्राई हैबिटेट. एंड दिस इज़ मोस्टली फाउंड इन केस ऑफ डेजर्ट. जो सैंड होता है उसकी वाटर होल्डिंग कैपेसिटी बहुत कम होती है. द नेक्स्ट इज फिजियोलॉजिकली ड्राई हैबिटेट. सो इट मीन्स कि जो सॉइल है इट हैज़ वाटर होल्डिंग कैपेसिटी बट जो प्लांट्स एब्जॉर्ब कर सकते हैं वाटर को वो फॉर्म ऑफ वाटर इज नॉट अवेलेबल फॉर द प्लांट्स. सो प्लेसेस वेयर वाटर इज प्रेजेंट इन एक्सेस अमाउंट बट इट इज़ नॉट such as that can be absorbed by the plants easily. So plants के लिए available form of water is not present in this type of habitats. And ये जो habitats हैं they are mostly either too salty like marshy areas या फिर वहाँ पे जो soil है that is highly acidic and or too hot or too cold. So इस condition में water is available in the soil but that is not available for the plants to be absorbed. The next comes habitats dry physically as well as physiologically. So example is slopes of mountain. जो mountain के slope है वहाँ पे एक तो जो water holding capacity है that is also very poor और जो available water है that is also not absorbed by the plants. So जो xerophytes हैं they are the characteristic plant और special plants of deserts और semi desert region. जहाँ पे dry areas हैं वहाँ पे ऐसी vegetation देखने को मिलती है. And they can grow also in mesophytic condition. और ये जो plants हैं they can also grow in optimum conditions very easily. जहाँ पे पानी available sufficient amount में होता है वहाँ पे भी ये grow कर सकते हैं. And these plants can withstand the tough extreme environmental conditions like low humidity and very high temperature. So they can easily tolerate these tough conditions which is not possible for the mesophytic plants. Next, xerophytes are categorized into several groups on the basis of their withstand capacity or duration they take to complete their life cycle. So first are drought escapers or commonly known as ephemerals. So these are the plants which complete their life cycle within few weeks. Before the coming of tough conditions, they will set their seeds or any other structures that can withstand the tough environmental conditions. So these plants are commonly known as drought escapers, ephemerals, or drought evaders. So these are short-lived annual plants and complete their life cycle within a short period of 6 to 8 weeks. And during critical dry periods, they will survive by some special structures like seeds or fruits which have hard covering. They can resist the tough environmental conditions. For example, in case of seed, they have seed coat and fruits have pericarps respectively which can tolerate the tough environmental conditions. और जैसे ही conditions favorable हो जाएंगी वैसे ही वो जो seeds हैं वो germinate करेंगे and they will form the new small size plants which complete their life cycle within a few weeks of time. So this is the example of one ephemeral plant. And these are some other examples of ephemerals, xerophytic plants. For example, we have Tribulus terrestris, then Trianthema species and Carthema species. So these are some plants which are ephemerals. In next slide, we will also study some other examples. In xerophytes, the seeds gets matured before the onset of tough conditions. जो seeds होते हैं they become mature before the dry conditions approaches. Dry conditions आने से पहले ही seeds mature हो जाएंगे, and in this way जो plant है that remains unaffected by the extreme conditions, and these are commonly known as ephemerals, drought evaders or drought escapers. These plants are very common in semi-arid zones जहाँ पे जो rainfall है that is very poor और short duration का होता है, वहाँ पे ये plants grow करते हैं, and they complete their life cycle within few weeks. Examples, some other examples are Solanum xanthocarpum, Argemone mexicana, Chenopodium rubrum, and Euphorbia prostrate. So we will see this is the photograph of xanthocarpum, Solanum xanthocarpum. Why species name is xanthocarpum? Because xantho means yellow, carpum means fruit, it bears yellow color fruits. Next is Argemone mexicana. So this is also known as creepy poppy. This is Chenopodium rubrum, and finally comes Euphorbia prostrata. This is prostrata because it grows horizontally on the surface of soil. So these are some xerophytic ephemerals. Next category of plants, xerophytic plants, are drought enduring plants. Enduring means endurance, means tolerating capacity. So these plants can withstand the tough environmental conditions. These are small size plants which have capacity to endure or tolerate the drought conditions, जो dry periods को tolerate करते हैं. Then third category is drought resistant plant. So these plants will produce or modify their body parts to overcome the tough conditions or dry conditions. So develop certain adaptive features in them so that they can resist the extreme drought conditions. Some grow on rocky soils. These are commonly known as lithophytes, and some grow on soil and gravel, commonly known as samophytes, and some may grow on the wasteland, and these are known as eremophytes. Sometimes we use this term for the plants which grow in desert. जो desert में plants grow करते हैं उनके लिए भी हम eremophyte term use करते हैं. Some plants of xeric habitat have water storing fleshy organs. They store a lot of water in these organs, while some do not develop such structures, like non-succulent xerophytes. So these are the xerophytes which grow on rocky, sandy gravel soil or rocky surface. Next, on the basis of fleshy parts or non-fleshy parts, we can divide xerophytes into two categories. These are succulent xerophytes, which means they are fleshy and they store water in their body parts. Like these, the examples of some fleshy xerophytes or succulent xerophytes are, these are the xerophytes having fleshy leaves. So they have fleshy leaves. For example, we have aloe vera, agave, haworthia, and bryophyllum, peperomia, and calonche. So these are the plants having succulent leaves, fleshy leaves. Then second category is of non-succulent xerophytes. These are also known as true xerophytes. इनको true xerophytes भी कहा जाता है. इनमें कोई भी fleshy structures नहीं होते, present होते हैं. Firstly, we'll discuss about succulent xerophytes. These are those plants in which some organs become swollen and fleshy due to presence of water in them. They store a lot of water in their body parts. While in case of non-succulent plants, these plants don't have such fleshy or swollen organs which store water. They have well-developed root system. Water stored in these tissues, in case of succulents, water stored in these tissues, ये जो water है इसको consume करते हैं ये plants during the extreme drought condition. जब बहुत ज़्यादा extreme drought हो जाता है, then they use this water which is stored inside these fleshy structures like leaves. Next, xerophytic adaptation. Before discussing xerophytic adaptations, the non-succulent xerophytes are like pinus. इसमें कोई भी फ्लैशी पार्ट्स नहीं होते हैं, जैसा हमने सक्यूलेंट्स के केस में पढ़ा था. दे हैव नीडल लाइक लीव्स. देन नेक्स्ट इज अकेशिया निलोटिका, जिसमें जो लीव्स होते हैं दे आर पिनेटली कंपाउंड. देन नेक्स्ट कैटेगरी इज example is equisetum, commonly known as horsetail. It is a pteridophyte. Next is ephedra, commonly known as jointed fir. and it is also a xerophytic plant. It's a gymnosperm, highly advanced. We can say this is the advanced gymnosperm. The next comes xerophytic adaptations. So दो तरह की होती हैं xerophytic adaptation. First one is xeromorphic adaptation. So these are the adaptations which are genetically inherited. So genetically fixed and inherited adaptations, और ये environment के influence से change नहीं होती हैं, they are fixed. So they will appear in the xerophytes irrespective of conditions. Condition चाहे जैसी भी हो, they will appear in these plants. Second type of adaptation, xeroplastic adaptations. So these are the acquired adaptations in response to extreme environmental conditions. So these features are induced by drought and are always associated with dry conditions. So these characters gets disappeared when we provide it with suitable conditions. So they are never inherited. ये inherit नहीं होते हैं, और ये जो characters हैं जो acquire किए जाते हैं, they get disappear when the plant is grown under optimum conditions or favorable conditions. So this is the example. This photograph shows the example of non-succulent xerophytes. It includes nerium, commonly known as canare, then pinus, and casuarina, equisetum, calotropis, procera, and ephedra. So these are the examples of some non-succulent xerophytes. Next, important xerophytic features are summarized under the following heads. It includes morphological adaptations, then comes anatomical adaptations, and third categories of physiological adaptation that we'll discuss one by one in detail. So firstly, we'll discuss about the morphological adaptation shown by xerophytes. Firstly, about roots. जो xerophytes होते हैं, they have well developed root system, and it also bears dense root hairs. So well-developed root system is present in case of xerophyte, which is profusely branched, and this is more extensive as compared to the shoot system, and grow very deep in the earth and reach the layer where water is available, और वहाँ तक पहुँचता है जहाँ पे ground water present होता है in large amount, and root hairs are densely developed near the growing tip of the rootlets, and it helps in absorption of water. So these root hairs enable the roots to absorb sufficient quantity of water. Its main function is to increase the surface area of water absorption. So this is one xerophyte. We can see it has a well-developed root system which is profusely branched and have extensive root hairs in its tips. It helps in absorption of water. Next is stem. Stem in case of xerophytes is well developed as compared to hydrophytes. It may be aerial or subterranean. It means ये above the ground surface हो सकता है या फिर underground हो सकता है. So it may be either aerial or subterranean, which means underground or below the soil surface. It becomes very hard and woody due to presence of excessive mechanical tissue, and it is also covered with thick coating of wax, and in some cases it is covered with silica, for example in case of equisetum. In some cases stem is covered with dense hairs, for example in case of calotropis procera, इसमें जो stem होता है that is covered with dense hairs, and in some cases stem gets modified into thorns as in case of Duranta repens or Ilex. In succulents, the main stem itself becomes bulbous and fleshy, and it seems as if the leaves in these plants are rising directly from the top of root. ऐसा लगता है कि जैसे root से directly leaves arise होते हैं. And the example is Clinia articulata. So this is Euphorbia royaliana. This is Duranta repens, which shows thorns. Next, this one is Ilex. And finally, this photograph is of Clinia articulata. In some xerophytes, जो stem होता है that is modified into leaf-like flattened green fleshy structure and which performs the function of photosynthesis, जिसको कहा जाता है Phylloclade or Phylloclade. It occurs in many xerophytes, for example in case of some cacti and Cocoloba. Botanical name is Molenbeekia, and these two are the family examples of Phylloclade. So this is the example of Phylloclade. This is Opuntia that we can see. So इसका जो stem होता है that gets modified into leaf-like structures, and leaves gets reduced into spine-like structures, and this fleshy part performs the function of photosynthesis. Phylloclade has one unique point that it contains more than one nodes. So इसमें एक से ज़्यादा nodes present होते हैं. So this is the difference in between cladode and Phylloclade. In case of cladode, there is single node. So this is the picture which shows chlorophyll. It occurs in case of Ruscus. And this is a photograph which shows cladode. It is present in case of asparagus. So in case of asparagus, जो branches हैं, they gets modified into needle-like structures which are similar to leaves, and they helps in photosynthesis. And this picture shows some examples of Phylloclade, like we have Homocladium, Homolocladium, and Molenbeekia, commonly known as Molenbeekia. Then we have example of cladode, that is Asparagus racemosa. Then we have chlorophyll, example is Ruscus, and phylloid that we'll discuss in leaf modification, which is present in case of Acacia auriculiformis, commonly known as Australian acacia. So in Ruscus plants, जो branches होती हैं, they develop in the axil of scaly leaves, और जो scaly leaves होते हैं, they get metamorphosed into leaf-like structures, जिनको कहा जाता है chlorophyll. So in this point, it contains some leaf-like structures, and these are known as chlorophylls. In case of asparagus, जो axillary branches होती हैं, they become small needle-like green structures, and they look exactly similar to the leaves and perform the function of photosynthesis. These structures are known as cladode. इनको कहा जाता है cladodes. Next comes leaf modifications in case of xerophytes. So if leaves are present, they are caducous. Caducus means deciduous. They fall early in the season. जल्दी वो fall कर जाती हैं before the upcoming of tough environmental conditions. And in most of xerophytes, जो leaves होते हैं, they are generally reduced into scales. For example, in case of Casuarina, Ruscus, and Asparagus. And in some evergreen xerophytes, they have needle-shaped leaves. For example, in case of Pinus. Pinus की leaves needle-like होती हैं, they are evergreen. In succulents, leaves becomes, in some succulents, leaves swells and become fleshy and store large amount of water and latex in them. और ये एक रिजर्वॉयर की तरह काम करता है वाटर को स्टोर करके, and this water is used under extreme drought conditions. And in majority of xerophytes, जो leaves होते हैं, they are highly reduced and provided with thick cuticle. बाहर से इसमें thick cuticle होता है and dense coating of wax or silica to prevent the loss of water from their body surface. Sometimes जो leaves होते हैं, they gets reduced into spines, as in case of Ulex, Opuntia, Euphorbia, and Splendens. So इस केस में जो leaves हैं, they gets reduced into spine-like structures. So this is the Casuarina. इसमें जो leaves होते हैं, they are scaly leaves, and this is Opuntia, in which the leaves gets reduced into these spine-like structures to prevent the loss of water from the body surface. In case of Australian acacia, which is Acacia auriculiformis, इसमें जो green petiole होता है, that swells and becomes sickle-shaped. That becomes sickle-shaped and perform the function of leaf. And it is modified petiole and commonly known as phylloid. So this is the important feature. This is a petiole modification, leaf petiole modification, and this petiole perform the function of photosynthesis, और इसकी shape होती है sickle shaped. The phylloid greatly reduce the water loss and store excess amount of water and perform the function of photosynthesis. The next term is trichophily. Tricho means hair, phylly means leaves. So xerophyte exposed to strong wind, and their undersurface is bears thick cover of hairs. जो उनकी अंडर सर्फेसिस है, उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा हेयर्स प्रेजेंट होते हैं, एंड दीज हेयर्स हेल्प्स इन चेकिंग द रेट ऑफ ट्रांसपिरेशन. दे प्रिवेंट द लॉस ऑफ वाटर फ्रॉम द अंडर सर्फेस ऑफ लीफ. नेक्स्ट कम्स रोलिंग ऑफ लीफ. दिस इज अगेन another adaptation shown by xerophytes. Leaves in some extreme xerophytic grasses have capacity to rolling or folding to prevent the loss of water. In these cases, stomata are scattered only on the upper surfaces. So these grasses which shows leaf rolling, इनमें जो stomata होते हैं वो सिर्फ upper surface में restricted होते हैं और ventral surface as the leaf rolls. और ये जो flowers produce होते हैं xerophytes में, they are produced under favorable conditions. When conditions are somewhat favorable, then they will produce flowers. और जो fruits and seeds हैं, they are protected by hard covering or shells. So this is the phylod, and the shape of petiole is sickle shaped, and this petiole modification is known as phylod. And examples is Australian acacia, and it bears these leaves, compound leaves in its tip. And the botanical name of this plant is Acacia auriculiformis. And this is the calotropis, which bear a lot of hairs on its undersurface of its leaves and stem, and these hair helps in prevention of water loss. Next comes anatomical adaptations. It includes various protective structures which were not present in hydrophytes. So heavy cutinization. Epidermis is covered with thick layer of cuticle, and it also includes lignification and wax deposition on the outer covering, outer surface of the epidermis, and even in the hypodermis is very common in case of xerophytes. And some plants secrete wax in small quantity, but some are regular source of commercial wax. And this cuticle makes the surface of xerophyte shining or smooth, and it reflects the rays of light. और जो light rays हैं वो reflect हो जाती हैं surface के ऊपर से, and does not allow them to penetrate deep in the plant tissue, and this checks the loss of water from the plant body. So this is the photograph which shows thick deposition of cuticle or wax-like substance that prevents loss of water. And this picture again shows the thick cuticle. This is the casuarina stem, and it contains this thick layer of cuticle which prevent the loss of water from the outer body surface. Next is epidermis. Epidermis is made up of small size cells which are compactly arranged, and outer side is covered with this cuticle or wax-like substance. So cells are small and compact. Usually जो epidermis होती है that is single layer, but in case of nerium leaf, epidermis is 2 or 3 layers. So this is the unique feature of nerium. And the stem, in case of stem, epidermal cells are radially elongated. And wax, tannin, resin, cellulose, etc., they are deposited on the outer surface of epidermal cells, which forms the screen or protective shield-like structure against the high intensity of light. And this helps in reduction in the rate of transpiration. So water loss को prevent करता है. So this is the section of nerium leaf. It shows multiple epidermis, multi-layered epidermis. So this is a unique feature of nerium. This is the photograph with labeling. So this is the nerium leaf. It also contains sunken stomata that we will discuss in upcoming slides. Next, in some grasses, there are some special type of cells which helps in leaf rolling. And these cells are present in the upper epidermis. And these large size cells with thin-walled, large size cells having thin-walled cells are commonly known as Bulliform cells, motor cells, or hinge cells. ये जो cells हैं, they helps in leaf rolling. This is the photograph of maize which shows leaf rolling under high temperature condition. और ये जो leaf rolling है, this is an adaptation to prevent the loss of water. And these cells are usually present on the upper surface of leaves, and especially on the upper epidermis of the leaf. And these are highly specialized motor cells. They facilitate the leaf rolling by becoming flaccid during dry periods. जो ये large size के cells हैं, इनके अंदर से जब पानी बाहर निकल जाता है, with the loss of water they becomes flaccid, and this flaccidity of cell results in rolling of leaf. And bulliform cells are common occurrence in the leaves of in the leaf epidermis, especially on the upper epidermis of the sugarcane, bamboo, and other number of grasses. So these are the special characteristic feature of grasses. In this photograph, in this section of leaf, we can see these large size cells are known as bulliform cells. When they get flaccid with the loss of water, then they helps in the rolling of leaves. In this photograph, we can see these large size epidermal cells which are present on the upper epidermis. These are known as bulliform cells, and their main function is in leaf rolling in some grasses. Next comes hairs. These hairs plays very important role in prevention of water loss from the body surface of plant, especially in case of xerophytes. So they are epidermal in origin, means they arise from epidermis, may be simple or compound, or unicellular or multicellular हो सकते हैं, and these hair protects the stomata and prevent the excessive loss of water. In some plants, surfaces of stem and leaves develop characteristic ridges and furrows. Ridges और furrows होते हैं, और जो stomata होते हैं, they are restricted to these ridges and furrows to prevent the direct contact of light with stomata. So जो furrows होते हैं और pits होते हैं in plants, these are the common site of presence of stomata. Stomata इन्हीं sites में present होते हैं. Hairs found in these depressions protect the stomata from the direct strokes of strong wind and sunlight. जो strong wind है और sunlight है उससे protect करते हैं ये hairs stomata को. So these are the hair-like structure which are known as stomata, trichomes. And under microscope we can see these structures. These are epidermal or epidermal in origin, and they helps in prevention of water loss. Next comes stomata. The number of stomata per unit area in case of xerophyte is greater as compared to mesophytes. Mesophytes से ज़्यादा number होता है stomata का, means stomatal density is greater in case of xerophyte as compared to mesophytes. And जो stomata present होते हैं, they are especially sunken type, and in some cases they may be found on the furrows and pits of the body parts. And the subsidiary cells of sunken stomata. Subsidiary cells are the cells which surrounds the guard cells, and these cells of sunken stomata have such arrangement that they form an outer chamber, and that is connected with the narrow opening or stoma. एक outer chamber बनाते हैं ये, और वो जो chamber होता है that is connected with the pore like opening which is known as stoma. And such type of specialized stomata are very common in case of some conifers, cycas or equisetum. And walls of these guard cells and subsidiary cells are heavily cutinized. इसमें cuticle की deposition होती है, and they are also lignified in case of many xeric plants. So this is the special characteristic feature of these xerophytes. In case of dorsiventral leaves, that is the leaves of dicots. Dicot की leaf को dorsiventral leaves बोलते हैं. Stomata are generally found on the lower surface. इसमें जो stomata होते हैं, they are restricted to lower surface, that is ventral surface. But in rolling leaves, in case of grasses, they are scattered mostly on the upper surface. जो stomata होते हैं, they are restricted to the upper surface. In the rolled leaves, stomata are protected from the direct contact of outside wind and light. And the stomata plays very important role in controlling the rate of transpiration. So their main role is in gaseous exchange. They helps in absorption of carbon dioxide also, and release of oxygen, and also the release of carbon dioxide. So this is the section which shows this sunken stomata. जो subsidiary cells होते हैं वो एक chamber बनाते हैं which is known as stomatal chamber, and it is connected with the pore like opening, that is stoma. So these are known as sunken stomatas. So this is the air cavity, and these are the guard cells, and these subsidiary cells form this chamber which is known as stomatal chamber, and it is connected with the guard cells, and it opens through a small opening which is known as stoma. Next is hypodermis. It is the layer which is present inner side of the epidermis. In xerophytes it is present just below the epidermis, और ये one layer thick भी हो सकती है, it may be several layer thick, and it is made up of thick walled compactly grouped cells. And the cell may be similar to epidermis. ये जो cells होते हैं epidermis की तरह हो सकते हैं, and may either be derived from epidermis or from cortex in case of stem. Stem के केस में ये जो hypodermis है ये बनती है या तो epidermis के cell से या फिर cortex के cell से. But in case of mesophyll, in case of leaf, लीफ के केस में it is made up of mesophyll tissue. And the hypodermal cells may sometimes be filled with some chemical substances like tannin and mucilage. So this is the section of Cagearina stem. It shows this thick-walled cells which are sclerenchymatous, and they form the hypodermis, and it plays very important role in mechanical support. Again, this is the cell which shows this hypodermis, which is sclerenchymatous. This is the section of dicot stem. So this is made up of thick-walled cells. Next is ground tissue. It forms the major part of the body, and it is made up of sclerenchyma, which is the dead tissue and is mainly concerned with the mechanical support. Xerophytes with caducous leaves means जिसके leaves गिर जाते हैं, leaves plants which shed their leaves. The photosynthetic activity is taken up by outer chlorenchymatous cortex. जिसमें leaves गिर जाते हैं उसमें जो outer cortex है that perform the function of photosynthesis, and this type of cortex is known as chlorenchymatous cortex. So this chlorenchymatous tissue is connected with outside atmosphere through stomata, and the gaseous exchange takes place through the regular manner in green part of the stem through the stomatas. In case of succulent stem means fleshy stem जो होते हैं और जो leaves fleshy होते हैं, the ground tissue are filled with thin-walled parenchymatous cells and which store large amount of water, mucilage and latex. So जो fleshy parts हैं, they are made up of parenchymatous cells which are thin-walled living cells, and they store excess amount of water and mucilage. This makes the stem swollen and fleshy. इन cells की वजह से ही जो stem होता है that becomes fleshy and swollen. This is the section of Cagearina stem. It contains the outer cortex. In some xerophytes, this cortical region is made up of these chlorenchymatous cells. They perform the function of photosynthesis, and it mostly occurs in case of xerophytes जिनमें leaves caducous होते हैं, means जिनके leaves जल्दी गिर जाते हैं. So this is the mucilage cavity which is found in succulent xerophyte. और ये जो cells हैं, they are made up of parenchymatous cells. They store mucilage and water in excess amount. The mesophyll in leaves is very compact with reduced intercellular spaces. जो leaves होते हैं xerophytes के, उनमें जो mesophyll होता है that is made up of compactly arranged cells, और इसमें जो intercellular spaces हैं they are highly reduced. और palisade tissue इसमें develop होता है in several layers. It contains several layers of palisade parenchyma, which is a part of mesophyll. So यहाँ पे हम देख सकते हैं जो palisade parenchyma है, it is multi-layered. There are some xerophytes in which mesophyll is surrounded by thick hypodermal sheath, which is made up of sclerenchyma. In कुछ xerophytes के केस में जो hypodermal sheath है वो surround करती है mesophyll को, and this hypodermal sheath is made up of sclerenchyma, which are the dead cells, and forms from all the side except below. सिर्फ जो vascular bundle वाली side है वहाँ से ये इसको cover नहीं करता, otherwise it is covered from all the sides by this sclerenchymatous tissue. Cells in the body are generally very small. जो cells होते हैं plant body में, they are very small. In case of xerophytes, thick-walled and compactly grouped. Intercellular spaces. Next comes conducting tissue. So they have well-developed conducting system. It provides mechanical support also. And vessels are large and lignified, while the tracheids are smaller in size. And annual rings in this case, in these xerophytes, are prominent. So by counting these annual rings, we can count the age of tree or plant. So these annual ring formation is very clear or prominent in case of xerophytes because there are seasonal changes in xerophytic condition. Again, this is the section of Cagearina stem which shows various parts of this stem section. So this is the bundle sheath which covers the vascular bundles in case of Cagearina stem. In xerophytes, stomata open during night hours, and they also produce certain acids during night time. In dark, the plant respire and produces acids, और ये जो acids बनते हैं they are accumulated in the guard cells, और जो गार्ड सेल्स हैं उसमें ऑस्मोटिक कंसनट्रेशन इंक्रीज हो जाती है, दैट रिजल्ट्स इन एंडोऑस्मोसिस। जो सब्सिडरी सेल्स हैं उनसे वाटर आ जाता है गार्ड सेल्स के अंदर, गार्ड सेल्स बिकम टर्जिड, जिससे स्टोमेटाज ओपन हो जाते हैं, एंड दिस गार्ड सेल बिकम टर्जिड मीन्स फिल्ड विद वाटर, और स्टोमेटा ओपन हो जाएंगे। एंड इन सनलाइट जो एसिड्स हैं ड्यूरिंग डे टाइम, दीज एसिड्स डिसोसिएट एंड प्रोड्यूसेस कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड, और ये जो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड रिलीज होती है ड्यूरिंग डे टाइम, दिस इज यूज्ड इन द प्रोसेस ऑफ फोटोसिंथेसिस, जिसकी वजह से जो ऑस्मोटिक कंसनट्रेशन होती है दैट रिड्यूसेस इन द गार्ड सेल्स, एंड फाइनली रिजल्ट्स इन एक्सोऑस्मोसिस मींस रिमूवल ऑफ वाटर फ्रॉम द गार्ड सेल्स, जिससे जो सेल्स हैं गार्ड सेल्स के दे बिकम फ्लैसिड एंड रिजल्ट्स इन क्लोजर ऑफ स्टोमेटा. Finally, we will understand this whole mechanism with the help of this photograph which shows the crassulacean acid metabolism. In case of xerophytes, जो stomata होते हैं वो open होते हैं during night time, and this carbon dioxide diffuses inside the mesophyll cell. Here it is combines with water to form bicarbonate ion, और ये जो bicarbonate ion है it combines with the 3 carbon acid which is phosphoenol pyruvate. ये जब इसका bicarbonate ion के साथ combine करता है it results in formation of 4 carbon acid, and this 4 carbon acid gets converted into malic acid during night time or dark period, and this malic acid is stored inside the vacuole. So this is the whole process which occurs during the dark period when stomata are open. During light time or during daytime जो stomata होते हैं they are closed, so जो carbon dioxide that cannot diffuse outside this epidermis. So finally during daytime जो malic acid है it comes out of the vacuole से बाहर आता है, then after that it undergoes decarboxylation means removal of carbon dioxide remove होगा, and इसमें हमारे पास बनेगा एक 3 कार्बन का acid that is pyruvate. So this CO2 is utilized in the Calvin cycle, C3 cycle, and finally this pyruvate will also gets converted into starch inside the chloroplast. So this is the brief idea about this. Next, in case of xerophytes, they have some important enzymes like catalases, peroxidases, which are more active as compared to mesophytes. In xerophytes, जो amylase enzyme है, the enzyme which hydrolyzes the starch is very active. Then presence of cuticle, polished surface, compact cells, sunken stomata, and these stomata are protected by stomatal hairs which regulates the rate of transpiration, and they have very high osmotic pressure which increases the turgidity of the cells, and the turgidity of the cell sap exert tension force on the cell wall. So this shows the turgid cells. These are the guard cells. जो guard cell जब turgid होंगे then they results in the opening of stomata. When these cells are flaccid, the stomata becomes closed. So this occurs during night time, during daytime. Sorry. Then we have some questions that you can solve, and you can give its answer in the comment section also. So you have to solve these questions. So this is the first question: water is absorbed by which of the following structures? So you will give answers of these questions. You can pause this video and solve these questions. I have given some photographs. These act as hint or hint for the answer. These are still truths. These are the some references which are used to make this presentation. So this was all about this discussion. If you have any questions and queries and any suggestions, you can give it in the comment section. If you found this presentation useful, then you can share it with your friends. Thank you. Have a nice day.